Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today is November 14th here in the United States, and you've joined the Kubeflow community meeting. And I want to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. It is also governed by the Kubeflow Code of Conduct. So we have a pretty jam-packed agenda for today, and I'd like to see if we could get started as we do usually with the update on the release from the release team. Daniela, are you here today?
Sure. All right. So let me get started with we have been we released 2 weeks ago, so we already have Kubeflow 1.8 GA, and what's left about that is just sharing some knowledge, just sharing some of the things that happened during the release. So the retro, we did 2 sessions in the releasing meeting, and what we learned about that is that during this cycle, we had a lot of contributions from the community, and a lot of people actually were interested in the release team. So a lot of people involved. I think the participation was higher than in any other release cycle, which is great, and I really appreciate that from the liaisons. So those are positives. Also regarding just how we organize ourselves, we had some items that probably the next release manager will continue doing. And then things that we could improve is that we noticed that this cycle was a little bit longer than others. Also, we noticed that a couple of items were added at the end or near the end of the release cycle. So new features or things were being added after even the feature free. So that's perhaps something that we could change or improve. So yeah, just a heads up for the working groups. Let's try to stick to the feature freeze and to the calendar as much as possible. That would really help the next release team and the next release manager to cut everything on time and give more time for testing and so on and so forth. So I guess that was the only really downside, I would say, or a thing that we can improve. But other than that, the release team and the release cycle went actually really, really great. And there was just one suggestion from David, actually from the release team, that we could start writing the blog post and start writing the change logs and start writing like the major changes and features in each component way earlier than we normally do, so that we know beforehand what is the release about, what are the deliverables of each team, etc. So I think that's good for the working groups, just to keep that in mind for, again, helping the next release team and the next release manager. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it summarized. You can find in the release notes all the discussion that we had, but that's pretty much it on the retro. Then the next item is that we are going to be releasing the presentation tomorrow. So, you know, the recordings from each working group and the release teams, we're going to be releasing that tomorrow. And regarding a patch release, I have been monitoring the release, the tracking issue, some issues, and I think there's nothing pressing, except one issue in pipelines that we need confirmation. But other than that, I don't think anything is really important for us to get another patch release. But you'll let me know throughout the days. Also, if the working groups think that there's anything else that we need to fix and include in a patch release, please, this is the time to let us know. We'll be driving that until we release a patch release. Otherwise, we'll just stick to 1.8.0 and that's it. And then final item is call for volunteers. This is open to all the community. I have created an issue in Kubeflow community so that everyone can comment if you're interested. If you're new to the community and you don't know where to start, this is a great opportunity. If you have been involved in the community already but want to be part of the release team, again, this is a great place to be. And of course, the existing release team is also invited to continue with their duties if that's what you want. So yeah, just comment on that issue if you're interested, and let us know. And I think that's it from the release side.
One item we did have was this distributions.
I didn't add it though. Not sure if you, Josh, or Matthew added it.
I added this in here. So if we go to installing Kubeflow, I think all the distributions, at least what we're getting feedback, is that most of the distributions still are listed as 1.7. Is that right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I tried to raise this with Google because they actually have updated the distribution, but they forgot to update this page. So I'll raise the PR to update it, but like the problem is that I can't. So they updated one part of the website, but they didn't update this part.
Okay, I remember the last release that was the duty of each distribution to update.
Yeah,
I remember
them, but they didn't do it. So yeah, is someone from Google on this chat that they can just remember to fix it?
I will talk to Shane about this if that's something that I could follow up.
Yeah. The only problem is that like I can make the PR. We could have easily done it that way, but the problem is you don't have a link on the website for the. It's not actually public. It's like it's published on your GitHub, but it's not actually published on your changelog on your website.
Okay, so the distribution owners, you guys, DAOs know that this probably should be updated when it can be. We're getting a lot, more than one comment about this from different people. So it'd be nice. I would give a shout out to IBM. They have been proactive and both in updating this as well as their work on doing some of the testing. So or having a test plan. So I think that they may get the special cookie. I don't know what you call it, but good job. I do want to also highlight, Daniela, you know, I want to give you an exit plan. You've done a great job on the release team. I want to recognize that. Virtual clap, everyone claps. Great job.
Thanks.
Are you feeling like, you know, you've been, you know, that you've, the acceptance test plan has been completed and, you know, you're ready to hand off, or what's your ongoing activity here? When do you turn into a pumpkin and stop?
You're right. So I guess when the new release team is formed, I guess I will be out. Probably, yeah. When we have the release manager, I think that's when it would be easier. Without a release manager, we cannot really just give everything and that's it. So I'll be here. I'll be around until we have one. So yeah.
Okay, so are we going, just to put a finer on this, do we think that next week are we going to have a release team meeting, and is that where people are going to bring up their names and we'll talk about the next release team manager? I'm great if we do it here too. I'm all supportive of David, but if other people want to join in, that's fine too. I just want to make sure that you have a transition here and you know how much longer you're, so we don't drag it on for you, right?
Yeah, ideally it will be when we have a new release manager. I can stick around for a bit until we, as an interim release manager, until we have the official one for the next one. So next week, I mean, I just created the issue for call for volunteers, right? So I don't expect a lot of people joining, so maybe we can skip that, but we need to have a meeting soon, right, to form the new release team.
Right. So go ahead, Jeremy.
You first, I don't know. Go on.
I'm just trying to figure out a calendar here. I think next week is Thanksgiving here in the United States. If for some reason we don't do it by next week, then that drags on into the beginning of December. I'm just trying to be conscious. Is that okay with you, Daniela? I mean, I don't see a lot of activity left for you to do, but I don't want you to be burdened either. So, I mean, if typically we give about 2 weeks for the new release manager to be, you know, assigned and approved and everything. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense. Again, as soon as we get a new release manager, I will be out, and I hope that's pretty soon. I have someone in mind. Probably they will not agree, but let's see. Also, I believe Jeremy from Red Hat, they also proposed, or they also wanted to participate. So maybe we can work on that as well.
Okay, Jeremy, go ahead.
That was one of the things. Yeah. Hopefully Sean is on here too, and Jay from our side. We'll volunteer to do whatever needs doing there, I suppose. One question on the previous topic around that releases page. At some point, Red Hat software was on there, and then I think with 1.6 we pulled it out. I'm trying to figure out exactly what the requirements are to get on that page, so we can, you know, look at getting back on.
We've never had someone go off and then on and then off and then on. But I guess as this messaging in the chat, historically there's been no rules. It's just, are you actively maintaining it?
Okay. Well, yeah, why we got off it, it was nothing technical. It was I think priorities and like staffing inside Red Hat. So nothing really changed on our end from what we do. So is it fair then for us to send a PR to the website?
I'd say the most logical way to do that would be to, once you release a version with Kubeflow 1.8, you can PR yourself back, because we're obviously going to be actively moving people to legacy who don't upgrade to 1.8 within some reasonable time frame, or who express that they will never update. That's what I was just wanting to discuss as well, that there's a couple of distributions like Amazon who have expressed that they will never be updating to Kubeflow 1.8. So potentially we should be moving them to legacy before it even hits the 6-month mark.
Okay, yeah, I mean that makes sense. We're not in a super rush.
But yeah, if you have had a real active release in the last 6 months, maybe that's something as well. But yeah, I think yeah, it's obviously the main purpose of that list is to help people find active distributions that they could use. So I don't know if you currently support 1.7 or if you're
yeah, we tested 1.8. We committed to doing that, so I'm not exactly sure where it stands. We'll follow up and
yeah.
No problem.
I agree. The rules and guidelines thing, Amber, would be great, but it's hard to do without the steering committee.
Well, we haven't had like steering committee in forever, and we've been making like guidelines, suggestions, and everything else. And so we can go ahead and propose something and let the community look at it and comment on it. We don't have to wait for a steering committee beyond the interim steering committee. We can go ahead and come up with that and have it there ready. I mean, I think it's a disservice to other distributions, because we've seen in the past people try to get listed and somebody says, no, you can't because of these things. And nowhere is it written that they can't. And it's just somebody arbitrarily saying, no, you can't be on there. We don't need to do that. We need to have clear guidelines, so anybody who is maintaining what we consider a distribution can do a pull request to be put on the page. And without clear guidelines, they don't know how to do that. And
So I think
I think
the
we can go ahead
plan
and come up with that.
previously was with the conformance testing, but then that kind of fizzled out.
Well, we can, and there's nothing that says we can't iterate. So we can have, this is the way it is today. And then as we get more mature and better, people better, guidelines and whatever. My point is, I just think we need to work toward that. I think that is something we need to get, we need to push out, and start working on, because just like Jeremy asked, other people have asked too, how can we get on there?
I'm all for just people raising PRs and adding themselves into the list, and they have to, well, Matthew, then they have to go through the approval process, and that would be, they have to get to look good to me, and the merge approval by the people that are going to ask a few questions about what their support is. I'm all for IBM being on there today. Right? I don't care how you guys put it on there. If you guys are committed to doing 1.8 and you've done the testing, or Red Hat is, fine, put it up there, right? I mean, this is all self-certified at this point.
Yeah, so the only thing that is a requirement is that you have to have had a release in the last 6 months to be on the top part of the page. You can be on the bottom part of the page, anyone, but the main reason is that we do need to be slightly protective of that page for two reasons. One is because that's how the majority of people will experience Kubeflow. So we want to have at least a minimal level of filtering going on that page. So that when someone looks down the list, they actually see active distributions. That's the main criteria, I think. So, we don't want to have someone on 1.5, distribution, for example.
I don't really care about that, but that's my opinion. I think we should table this conversation and put it on the agenda at a lower part. We've got a couple other things that people want to get to, but Matthew has a position, Amber has a position, I have a position. This is typically a very difficult conversation, takes a lot of discussion back and forth. I don't feel like it was on the agenda for right now. I'm glad to talk about it. I just don't want to do it right now.
Yeah, I mean, aside this issue of new ones being added, there's also the moving to legacy discussion around the couple of distributions, which have said they're not interested in supporting 1.8. But that's a whole separate.
Okay, let's put that on the agenda. We can talk about that next week or the week after. I mean, next week's going to be a slight week anyway, so we'll see how that goes. Daniela, once again, great job. Thank you very much. I don't know.
Appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say thanks again to everyone that participated in the release team, all these zones, Josh. Also, thanks for your contributions there. And I'll just stick around until we have the next release manager, just for a bit. And once again, call for volunteers. The issue is open already. Please let us know as soon as possible if you're interested, because we are going to start once again with a new release. So yeah, that's it.
Well, you join an esteemed group of colleagues who have been release managers from the top companies in the world. And I think that all of them, recognize your contributions even more so than probably the rest of us, because they've done it. Thank you from me and from everybody from the community.
All right, thanks.
Okay, let's keep going quickly. LLM activities. I want to put an agenda item on our discussion about LLM activities. I saw one today that came up. I don't know if anybody knows about this training PR or wants to discuss it. Maybe we can look at it real quick. Does anybody know about this PR here
yeah, I think we can speak about it, Josh. So sorry for interrupting you.
Go ahead.
Can we, before jumping to LM, cover Spark a little bit?
Sure,
Because,
sure.
I just need to drop it. I just.
Okay, I didn't know whether we could cover this in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I will cover this topic as well, because I don't see John on the call, but I know what we're doing, because we kind of collaborating with him on this issue together.
So you want to go to the Spark operator now?
Yeah, maybe just quickly. So, you know, like
Fine, go
it won't
ahead.
take much time. Yeah, thank you, Josh. Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm Andre from Optimal Training Working Group. So before I start, like we have a lot of like really good discussion during KubeCon around Kubeflow and Spark. But before I can start, so we have a few folks here from AWS, from Apple. So do you want to introduce yourself to the community? Because I think I'm new to this call and maybe just get familiar with all other folks here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Andre. Hi, everyone. My name is Varabuntu. I'm a principal open source architect working with AWS and heavily focused on Spark Operator, working with a lot of customers and who are using Spark Operator on EKS. And one of the main concerns that we hear from the customers are like, it's not properly maintained and a lot of PRs and issues out there, and they wanted somebody to take over and so that they can start contributing towards it. And we see a need. We had a chat with the Google folks and who actually published this repo under Google Cloud Platform. And then we are thinking for a better home for Spark Operator, you know, whether it's Kubeflow or it can be a separate project. But this discussion, Andre invited us. Just want to see what's the feasibility, what kind of help that we can get under Kubeflow. But just going back to the context of Spark Operator itself, there are not many open source Spark operators out there. This is the only popular one, which is being used by many cloud providers at the moment. But it suffers from some performance issues and some outstanding issues, which requires an immediate you know, fixing and things like that. And also built a long-term plan for this Spark operator, which is kind of heavily used across data processing, whether you take it as ML or just a purely data processing. It doesn't really fit only with ML. This is like on its own for the users have been using Spark operator, you know, just for the data processing. But now due to the Gen AI and, you know, ML boost, and a lot of users are thinking about integrating into their pipelines of Spark operator as well. So that's the context. I just want to open up for any comments.
Yeah, thank you, Vara. Yeah, do we have anyone else who just want to introduce himself before I can just give an update like what we've been discussing?
I know we have few folks from AWS here,
Right.
but I can just simply mention like they're all from open source teams and also somebody working, helping the customers as well and looking to see, you know, the direction about Spark operator. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, so just to give you a little bit of context, like, so Marcin also, I think right now on the call, Marcin from Google, basically like the main maintainer of Spark operator. So we've been like discussing.
I'm not a maintainer.
Oh.
Don't put this blame on me. I'm
All
just
right.
trying to find the hope for it.
Yeah, you've been like a maintainer, basically, like one of the.
No. Again, don't put this blame on me.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Yeah, but I mean, in any case, like we had a conversation with folks from Spark Operator, with AWS, and also like from us, just to see how we can find a better home for Spark Operator as an open source project. So there've been like a couple of discussions, as well, like mentioned, like we can adopt Spark as part of Kubeflow components, or we can adopt Spark as like completely independent sandbox project under CNCF. So I think like for us as a Kubeflow community, we need to actually try to adopt Spark within Kubeflow, even for users who just don't want to use all the Kubeflow components. Because I think like if you're speaking about like whole ML lifecycle, right now we can, as I mentioned several times before, we're completely missing the first step of ML workflow, such as data preparation. Which means like, for example, if you want to do a large distributed training for large models, and if you want to like streamline your data from Spark to training, today Kubeflow just doesn't support this out of the box. So what I've been looking for, and there are like several, you know, pros to adopting Spark within Kubeflow, so we can have a better integration within training and Spark. And in the meantime, also like AWS or any other folks who will be interested can create the distribution on top of the existing open source Spark operator within Kubeflow. So the thing is that I really want to speak about. So the beauty of Kubeflow is basically the composability. The thing is like our, you know, users using Kubeflow, they can take a specific component and use it for their systems, right? So I'll be speaking with people from like Bloomberg, IBM, some of them using few components of Kubeflow, you know, like not the whole distribution. For example, maybe they're using only serving and training or pipelines and notebooks, right? So the thing is, like, for Spark, and specifically for, you know, like for use case that Vara mentioned, like I was thinking that even if Spark will be part of Kubeflow, if someone, the actual company, can create distribution on top of this, this distribution basically can contain all the required components that they want to maintain. Basically, we can have a precedent that when you want to create distribution of Kubeflow, you don't have to use all of the components of Kubeflow. You can just use components that your customers or your users require, right? And which basically create a much broader ecosystem that we have today. So these things, I just want to speak with the community. What do you think about it? And do you think Kubeflow is a good, you know, place for Spark to live? Because we're already part of CNCF, we can find maintainers from whether it is from Vara's team or for other, like, you know, users of Spark operator. And like at the end, we can just, you know, grow our ecosystem, right? Yeah, so just want to think, like, speak, what do you think about it, like, and what like community think for adoption, and if we want to support AWS moving forward with us, or whatever vision on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andre, I just want to quickly intro myself because I was having trouble there getting thing unmuted. So I'm Russ. I work at Apple with Andre. And in general, like, you know, we have some Spark activities going on in our world as well. And kind of what we're seeing more and more, like, just to reiterate Andre's point, is Spark becomes kind of a big feeder into the ML ecosystem because of the data processing capabilities. So I think along with that, and I think the use outside of just the ML world, I think it's still a really important tool for being able to process large data sets and then prepare them for downstream activity. And I think in general, I think as more folks start bringing big data into the ML world, I think it could be a very useful tool to ensure they have, like, you know, let's say the full suite of tools available to them to be able to build large models.
Yeah,
that's all I really want to add. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I just want to like like the last point before we jump to the question to you, Amber and Kamala. So we also have a precedent. We have API operator, which is also under Kubeflow right now. API operator even not used only for ML, right? We have many users using API for HPC computing, and we still kind of maintain API under Kubeflow. So Spark will not be like the first precedent when we take non-ML, you know, technology and try to adopting this for our users, right? Yeah, go ahead, Amber. You have your hand raised, as I can see.
So just, and this may be naive of me, but because Spark is Apache Spark and belongs to the Apache Foundation, as we refer to this, if this comes over, do we need to also work with the Apache Foundation to ensure we're not breaking any trademarks? We're not, you know, we're not seemingly forking a project of theirs. Can we still use the name if it's over? Like, have we thought about any of those pieces of this?
I've worked with the Apache Foundation a lot. They're usually very, as long as you're not manipulating what you're referring to as the name of the trademark, they don't have any problems.
Okay, we'll need to double check that, because what we don't want to do is have the Apache Foundation, you know, not be happy with the CNCF because of something we're doing. I'll reach out to Ted Dunning because and see what his thoughts are and see about that. I just want to make sure that we're playing nice in this space because it becomes very important as we move into the CNCF.
I mean, that makes sense. Just to add one additional point there, like the operator itself is like outside of the Spark world officially, right? It doesn't really have a home today. You know, the Spark license is obviously Apache, but the making Spark run on Kubernetes with the operator, I don't think that's necessarily covered by the Apache ecosystem.
Even though
it's still worth having that conversation for sure.
Yeah,
go ahead.
It kind of is. What I mean by that is Spark supports running on Kubernetes natively. And this is the only kind of discussion, right? That my main thought here is very simple. It's that if there's someone to maintain it and there are people who want to use the Spark operator, and that's separate from using Spark, then yeah, we should if we have people who are actually interested in maintaining, let's let them join. But like the main questions I have are there people actively willing to maintain on a long-term basis? And also, are there actual users beyond those maintainers?
Yeah, and I think that that is what I said, right, Matthew? So Vara, like an AWS team, and Vara as part of the team, they're willing to be part of the owner's files for Spark. So the question is like for their team, can we support them to move this forward? You know, like can we give them a good home, like you know the guidelines for like for triaging, to, like you know to grow ecosystem. Because like for their choice, whether it should be part of Kubeflow or it should be completely independent, like sandbox project under CNCF. And I mean, if their answer is yes, if Spark can grow, Spark operator can even like be more improved within Kubeflow, I think the best answer for them to join us, right? Because we have a use cases, right? AWS have a use cases. So there are several things that we can work together as a community, right? If that makes sense.
Hey, Kamons, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Kamons, go ahead.
First of all, Andre, I love the enthusiasm and super nice to see this for newer projects. My question from my side, it's not actually that much of a, no, it actually can be a question. First of all, I'm coming out of my cave and have some questions regarding how we ended up with the what happens with the previous plays of Spark. But for now, I'll keep those questions for after I will read some issues. My main, not concern, but what I'd like from my perspective as a Kubeflow community to have in mind is that is this effort with Spark an effort of making Spark work on Kubernetes or making Spark work with Kubeflow? And what I mean with Kubeflow is that, for example, if we're going as a community, and again, this is my opinion, going to integrate another tool like this, I think it would be helpful to always keep in mind of how does this component integrate with the rest of Kubeflow, whether it is the simplest of making sure there are Istio sidecars in the pods, for example, because the rest of the Kubeflow and user namespaces use those, or credentials and permissions and service accounts that need to be created in a user namespace because we expect multiple namespaces. So I think it makes sense that aside from talking about like the how to run Spark on Kubernetes, start having the architectural discussion there on, okay, but how will it also correlate with the rest of the Kubeflow components? Those were my thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Cameron. It's like I think as I mentioned, like we from training side will be looking for creating the intermediate level between Spark and training, using for example Apache Aeroflight or some in-memory storage system where you can basically feed your Spark data frames directly to your distributed training workloads, similar to Ray, right? Because in Ray there is a concept of Ray data and Ray train, and the beauty of this, because it's like in the one cluster, you can like literally feed the data from Spark to training in one cluster. It's much more efficient, because today, if users like run hundreds of workers, they have to like upload chunk of the data for every worker every time, right? Which means like it's completely like it's very slowed down their performance of training, right? Especially for large models. So this is the one thing that we can investigate moving forward, like in addition to other LLM proposals like that Jono created. There is like much more use cases that we can think about how we can create better integration between distributed training and Spark, or hyperparameter tuning and Spark, right? So we've never been thinking about it before, right? But there are huge opportunities we can discuss there.
But I think there is
there's
the third option as well, which is that we just have like a working group / SIG, if you want to call it that, that's just about running Spark with Kubeflow. And then they publish some guides on the website which explain some options for people to do it, because clearly you can already run Spark on Kubernetes, right? That's already a thing in various ways.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. So I think we need, so from my perspective, and this is my personal opinion, I think we need new working group for data. And like maybe we need working group data preparation or working group, just working group data, and we can think about it. Because like the question is like, if all of the folks agree that Spark can be part of Kubeflow, we need to think which part of working group it will join, right? So today we just don't have any working group for data analysis, data preparation, feature engineering, right? Feature extraction. So I think this piece is also missing from the ML lifecycle, right?
Just to be clear, you have to be owning the working groups are for things that own code, and SIGs are for things that don't. Just so we can clarify that.
Yeah, but we don't have like government structure for SIGs today in Kubeflow, right?
We used to, but yeah, we don't really have any now.
yeah, we just have a steering committee, technical oversight committee, and the working groups, right? But I think, like, I mean, we shouldn't block. I mean, if all people agree that Spark, like, you know, for running ML on Kubernetes, Spark is a good thing, and Spark could have a, you know, could live under Kubeflow, we shouldn't block people to move forward because of our, you know, election processes or other kind of organizational things we need to establish, right? But this is just my thought. I don't know. Like,
well, can't they continue to maintain it on the old repo temporarily?
I think so. Martin was pushing so hard for this, right? Because we just think about next step. Yeah, go ahead.
In theory, however, the repo sits under Google Cloud Platform repository. That is not the most convenient location for AWS folks who would like to heavily participate in maintaining. So that's part of the problem. From the license perspective, it's already on Apache, so it's good. However, all of the nasty legal details could play a significant role in that situation.
So there's also the other repo that we talked about last time that was a separate operator. Are they involved in this at all? Or?
Yes, Stackable. We didn't have a discussion with Stackable, so they're separate. So AWS folks just came in, like, they're from Data on ACAS. If you know about this repo, previously they used to have distributions of Kubeflow under this repository. So as Vara mentioned, they're part of open source team at AWS, right?
But it's a kind of similar situation. It also doesn't sit on a neutral ground. It's on the Stackable Tech repository, so more or less the same situation.
Yeah,
like that's what I'm thinking. Like, if there's a plan to merge them, like let's say that we want, like, so I think I'm like I am all for there being more ways to run Spark, assuming that people want them. But the question is, like, say we wanted to merge those two into a new one. Like, so rather than moving the repo from one to the other, let's say maybe we make a new repo that we do the blended version, or one of them becomes the main one and then the rest get merged into it. I don't know how it works, but
I think Stackable folks just maintain their own version of Spark Operator, which build on top of the Google one under their org. Yeah, but I don't know if they would, like, if in the future that we want to merge together and just have a more kind of, you know, people on owners file in the working group. I think that would be ideal goal, right? To collaborate with these guys as well.
If I understood correctly, their operator wasn't built on Google's operator.
Oh.
It was a separate thing from the very beginning. So merging these two things will not be like a Git operation. It would be rather a heavy amount of code changing, and maybe it would not be feasible at all.
All right.
So which one?
I think that could be. Maybe for Stackable, that might not be an interest for Stackable to make it open source if that is being supported as a vendor solution compared to the Google Cloud Platform that they open source Spark operator at the moment. So one thing we want to make sure here is we had a similar situation with Apache Flink as well. And when these frameworks started supporting Kubernetes and everyone started to build their own operator, but at one point Apache Flink community came around and they built their official operator that can run Kubernetes, but that did not happen to Apache Spark. So we think this is an opportunity what Google Cloud Platform open source this and use this and establish as a open source, like maybe CNC have donated as a, you know, approved, you know, over a long period of time, Spark operator, so that we can bring the rest of the community to work on single operator rather than creating their own thing.
Yeah.
There's also the opportunity to just donate it to the Spark project. Although historically Spark has been very opposed to expanding the scope of their project, and they would probably correctly say that we already have a way to run on Kubernetes.
Yeah, you're right. And the existing Spark support, they only focused on getting that Spark running on Kubernetes, but and not the native way of managing Spark on Kubernetes. That's what Spark operator with a custom controller provides. This is what customers are looking for because, yeah, you're right. So whether they take on that on board, maybe we need to talk to the Apache Spark folks. Or we are thinking because it's an operator, maybe it's better to sit under CNCF umbrella, Kubernetes operator, and then we have a lot of other ML folks who are using whether it's a Kubeflow, Ray, or whatever, and they can fit the Spark operator into their data pipelines or ML pipelines.
So we've talked about this for about 12 minutes. I think this could go on for a while. I think it's fantastic, but I'd like to get to a place where we can bring this to a decision. We talked about this in the steering committee, and we were supportive of a partnership, but we recognize that this may not be the only Spark integration option or support option. So we're supportive of this moving forward, but there may be other projects or other ways to support Spark that we don't want to say this is the only way. Right now, we had suggested and talked about that the code would be held outside of the Kubeflow project. That's not hard and fast, but the way that we had positioned it after talking about it is it would be an add-on component. I'm glad to take a recommendation of why it should be inside of Kubeflow. But our kind of belief of going forward is we need a couple of folks to take this forward to run this project for some period of time. And they need to figure out whether this is going to be a subgroup of one of the existing working groups, or it's going to be something outside of Kubeflow.
So
What
just
do
like
you
if,
mean
yeah.
by outside of Kubeflow, outside of Kubeflow organization on GitHub? So in completely separate repo, or just outside of Kubeflow, let's say core, or whatever you call it?
It can be a sandbox project under CNCF, but that might require a lot more effort, I guess, building something from scratch.
Yeah, I think like so. Sorry for interrupt you, Marcin. Like I think just so if we can find folks who actually are willing to maintain, like are we agree that we can like adopt this project as part of the core of Kubeflow components, and maintain it for several releases?
Let me give you my gut feel, and I'm glad to take it back to James and the rest of that. But my gut feel is if I feel comfortable, and this is just from my perspective, that we have somebody who's committed to take this through. Usually when I talk about integrating with third-party component, they need to say they're going to stay with us for 3 releases. That's a year and a half for us.
Yep.
Right? So if somebody feels comfortable that they can support this and financially be involved for a year and a half, great. Let's talk about bringing it in and doing support. If they can't, if they can say they can only do a release and see how it goes, I think we have to keep it arm's length.
Yeah, I think we can find a commitment. So let's just take this offline, and we can just provide you details, like if we can like find a commitment for several releases. And then if answer is yes, we can adopt, because I don't see an issue for in the future for us creating a working group data and explaining the different ways of running Spark on Kubernetes.
Well, there's also data includes things like Ray, right? People do really want to run
yeah,
Ray.
we can add Ray as the part of like working group data component, right? I don't see a problem there. I just see a lot of interest from our side, from AWS side, from many like side that Spark should be part of Kubeflow. That is what I want to say like to the community, and like that is why I believe that we should not, create any boundaries for not adopting this as part of Kubeflow, right? Because there's huge interest, right, from users.
So I think we're conflating Spark and Spark Operator, right? Like the thing that I'm still yet to be convinced is that the majority of people who want to use Spark on Kubernetes want to use this specific operator.
I'm not 100% agree with you, Matthew. Like I know many people who use Spark Operator in production with ML. So, and there is different ways and different people run this differently. Yeah.
So I'd like to figure out a way that we can push this forward, and for Marcin's,
right.
Been patient. I told him we'd get him a decision by Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I think we can. So do you want me to provide like list of the owners files who are willing to maintain this for several years? Oh, sorry, for several releases. And if the answer is yes, we can move forward. Then like
I think we need the owners. And the last piece that would be is I think we need a roadmap, even if it's visionary roadmap of how do we integrate, or how does it add value to Kubeflow? Somehow we have to, look at, and it doesn't have to be well-defined. It just says it could fit with this and this and this. Those would be the things that I think would be helpful. But yeah, sure. I mean, if you can get an owner's file together by Thanksgiving, or, before we meet in the first week of December, proposals, and people are willing to sign up for it, I think that's a great step forward, and I'm supportive of it.
Yeah, I think I can do it. Yep.
And we can then the next step after that, Josh, presumably would be to put it as a repo under the Kubeflow org with some disclaimer which says that this is a new project, like alpha or something.
Sandbox, whatever.
We can think about it. I think it's not another problem. Like we can just think about the adoption of alpha stage beta and then V1. So it's fine. So let me do this. Yeah.
I just want to circle back to Marcin and find out if that's still in. Does that work for you? I mean, you've been the leader here, right?
Yeah, sure. It will work. I'm not in like super rush, so I can definitely wait until post Thanksgiving.
Okay. So Andre, I know you have a lot on your plate with Kubeflow, but we're going to add this as at least you're going to be the temporary organizer of getting this together. Is that what we can put as the follow-up? Is the week after Thanksgiving, we'll talk about this with you?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, and we will single offline with AWS folks and other people who want to. If you want to be part of Spark Operator, maintainers, please reach out to me in Slack, and I can also add you to the proposal there.
I think the two things would be make sure you get the owners, but then also pretend like you're proposing to join a foundation, because in some sense you are, and be like, what a value, like even though you're in the foundation as yourself, but like as that project, write it as like, we are going to provide these values, you know what I mean, and then to the project, and then we can publish that for everyone else to see as well.
This is a great topic. I'm glad we got it out there. We got a plan. I think we've got to get on to a couple more things. Is it okay if we move on to the CNCF stuff? Because I think it's kind of critical that we talk about the CNCF things.
Yeah, thank you, Josh, for the time. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing this up and taking the leadership. I know it's not it been out there a long time. I think it's going to be a great value. So the CNCF, there's an open PR where you're supposed to read, Gideon's Bible, a fairly large amount of material. I think it was opened by Anna. Anna, are you here today? So I know that we've had this link to the guidelines. Does everyone know where to go and read the guidelines from the CNCF? Because they do require us to kind of act a certain way, especially if you're talking to the CNCF. So it's important, I guess the link is here, that you do acknowledge that you've read that. And there's quite a bit there. We also, in the steering committee, we talked about the Slack option, and we kind of came down to like these three options, which was do nothing, just leave it the way it is, migrate to the CNCF channel, or ask the CNCF or Slack to fund the Kubeflow community to have Slack with history. Maybe I'm simplifying or got these wrong, but that's kind of what we came up to. James was kind of more on the line of, and I was willing to accept that, to do nothing, to leave it as it is. Although I've been more like we should migrate to the CNCF and just try to see if we can grow our community within their kind of larger stream of folks. So, and the last option of trying to ask the CNCF to fund Slack for Kubeflow, I think would be a great thing, but I think it's going to become a hassle after year 2 and year 3. So I'm glad to hear what the community has to say here, but maybe we need to kind of take a vote about, with everything that we've got going on here, do we need to deal with this Slack right now, or should we put it off, I guess is really the question. Is do nothing an option? Do people want to move the Slack?
My strong preference is that we stay on our own Slack until it becomes a problem. Because the same way that Kubernetes did.
We got a second on do nothing.
But this is what Kubernetes did, right? So Kubernetes still to this day maintains its own separate Slack.
Do we have anybody else that has a different opinion?
I do, but I put it in comments, so I'll just leave it there.
Anybody else?
Just had a question, like if CNCF like owns a Slack channel or hosts a Slack channel, like does that alleviate a lot of work for anyone in particular?
I would say that the only benefit is that we get the fact that CNCF is funding the Slack so that we get access to the history and more permissions. But as you can probably see, the Kubeflow project has a lot of channels, similarly to how the Kubernetes project has a lot of channels.
Yeah.
And unlike most parts of the CNCF, we are quite a lot, not bigger in terms of users, but bigger in terms of scope. And that's my only kind of, and I think that it's not like I'm not open to migrating to the CNCF channel at some point. But
for right now, I'm going to leave this at do nothing for another, and I'll bring it up in another week, or and then we'll close this out in 2 weeks if we don't hear really strong opinion about moving the Slack. I'm willing to be convinced to do something else. My preference was to move into the CNCF channel, but right now I'm leaning towards do nothing because that's what I'm hearing. But whatever.
Just because we're still having active growth as well on the Kubeflow Slack. I'm pretty active at the moment. Like, you know, we're nearly hitting 10,000 users.
Yeah, I think it's active. I agree, but I think I kind of like agree with Amber and Josh, like, because the thing is like this channel was created like 5 years ago, even like over 6 years ago, and most of the people are not active. And I think like with migrating to CNCF, we can see who actually people, what kind of components of Kubeflow they're using, how we can better interact with them, right? And in the end, it will be more popular because it's part of CNCF Slack, right? So even if you see like 10,000 people in the channel, not of like few of them, you know, almost all of them, they're not active, right?
I can tell you exactly how many are active. Give me a second.
Yes. And also the question about like we're not pay for the Slack, right? Because we don't have history. So this is the issue, right? That I agree, because people cannot search for, you know, for answers in the Slack. It might be an issue for people who just try to be familiar with Kubeflow or just come to the project for the first time, right?
I think moving to the CNCF Slack will come with a whole nother set of administrative problems, but so what? You know, I want to be a good partner and I want to start the integration, and I think that's one way to do it. And I think we might get more folks from the Kubernetes community, but maybe I'm
the problem is that what happens in that when we move is that suddenly people would have to join another Slack and then search for the channels that they want to join.
Yeah, well, that means they're interested. All right. I get your point, and people will come on and they'll get lost and they'll be like, oh, what happened to this Kubeflow Slack? So I get that, but I don't know. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Right now, unless we get a strong push to do something else, it's do nothing. Doesn't mean we can't migrate later, but right now I think with everything else going on, it's do nothing, but I'm willing to be convinced the other way.
It's part of the, I mean, maybe wire it into the graduation conversations to say, look, we're trying to graduate. Can you do it as part of that? In other words, maintain the current one and just have them pay for it. And then the other question is, you know, are other projects homed on CNCF Slack directly?
With the exception of Kubernetes and a few other really big projects, most have just a single channel, like a single channel.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I think the easiest thing to do is just see if they'll pay for it.
So it's currently we have 780 active users. And so active is quite strongly defined in Slack as you have to actually be using Slack. So we've got about 1,000 people who are actively using our Slack.
Right. And how much was it? $2 to $10 per user per year or something?
Let me check Slack pricing. It's $7 per user per month.
Oh, I'm not going to go and try to find that money, but if somebody else wants to, that's fine.
$7 per user per month. We're paying list prices. The Kubernetes Slack instance is
I don't think they pay for that. I think that the CNCF and Kubernetes are some of the largest Slack instances that are deployed right now. And I think there's special agreements with Slack. I don't know that for sure, but I think that's what's happening. So I don't think they're going to fund us separately unless we're part of that other organization, because I believe they have special agreements worked out with Slack.
Yeah, so I'm just looking here. I've got the stats for the Kubernetes Slack here. They have 187,000 members on the Kubernetes Slack, and they have 6,000 weekly active. Let me check on the CNCF one. They have, give me a second.
Yeah, I mean, my take is everybody that uses Kubeflow uses Kubernetes. Our people are already on Kubernetes.
No, so there's two different Slack. Are we talking about moving to the Kubernetes Slack or the cloud native one?
Oh yeah, okay, that's a good point.
Hey Josh, I gotta drop. I have a hard stop at the top of the hour. I put
Yeah, go ahead. You got an update on the elections?
Yeah, so I put the proposed timeline in the chat. I'll update here. Basically, and then I'll get everything rolled out by Thursday to everybody. But basically, you've got to be eligible by the 20th of November. We'll open up the nomination phase on the 27th. We'll open up testimonials on the 11th of December. And then we'll open up voting on the 27th. Now, I got to put out all the details around that. But those requirements, if you could link to those so everybody knows, you've got to be eligible by the 20th of November in order to nominate yourself and be part of the voting. So we'll get all of that written up. So and I found out we can use the Cornell Civis. We don't have to have a special one. So if you've been around the Ubuntu community or others, there's a lot of projects at the CNCF, to include the Kubernetes project, that have used Cornell's. I've administered that 20 plus different elections over the years. So I'm super excited, super easy to do it. We'll just have one manual step, which is verifying all the emails, but that's why there's a gap and a couple weeks in between each phase, because we'll have to verify email addresses for the voting keys. But we can kick this off. So super excited. And I got to drop. Sorry, y'all.
Oh, Amber, can you message? Do you have that recording, by the way, for the Slack summit?
Do I have what?
What's the status on the recordings for the summit?
I'll get those out this week. I got to drop. I seriously have a
Okay, yeah, sorry.
I'm already late for. Bye.
Okay, Jeremy, you had put this in about Red Hat. Is there something that we need to copy or to bring
just
up?
the first one? Where I asked Sean, who hopefully is on here, to go through the graduation criteria and see what work our teams can pick up to help move it, and work with Amber on that. I do have a question though about, when we're in this graduation process, what if any restrictions are put on the project itself? I'm hoping none, but an example is like one of our teams is working on putting together a model registry, and he opened a PR in the Kubeflow repo asking, hey, would this community like to work on a registry together? And if we're in the graduation process, does that restrict the ability to introduce a registry or any other technologies like that Carlos from IBM is planning to probably already talk to you about it at KubeCon? But I really need an answer to this question somehow.
Well, I think you should look at Kubernetes, right? Kubernetes as a whole has a very stable core at this stage. And they have a process to add new things, which is pretty defined. You know, they have a process for proposals and then a step, you know, alpha, beta, GA. If similarly we have I think we can have a similar process for components, right?
Yeah, we have actually, that's a good point, Matt. We have an incubation process that Jay, who's on, is actually, I think, in the middle of. I think she wrote the original, but anyway, we could just like model it over Kubernetes. That's actually not my question. By graduation, I meant you know, like the CNCF process.
You mean, does it impact the actual process to become a graduated project?
Yeah.
I think the graduation has its own, you know, it has some pretty clear defined requirements. I don't think any of them are specifically around how stable the project is, you know.
Yeah. Okay. I wish we still had Amber, because I think it was her who raised that as a possible thing. I guess it was just, I'm looking for clarity on it. We can deal with it offline. But regardless of that, you know, folks, if you can, take a look at that model registry issue and see. I would love to know what you all think about it coming in, or even working on it together separately from Kubeflow, regardless if you have this use case for your product.
I mean, there needs to be a better model registry that exists open source, but we don't really have a great option in the whole world right now.
I know, that's literally why we're gonna like build this thing and want to do it somewhere with open governance.
I think it's sorry, Jeremy. I think it's a great start. I think I definitely agree with you that we should think about model registry under ML umbrella, under, you know, trying this on Kubernetes more natively. I think first of all, we need to think about whether any working groups can cover these use cases. If their answer is no, we might need to figure out like how we can build this, and just, you know, maybe submit the Kubeflow enhancement proposal, for example, right? We don't have a process today, you know, how the new project can be created or can be, you know, donated, adopted, right? But I think like as a start, and just to think about where it can fit this specific component would be good, you know. Should it have like independent working group? Should it live under training? Or, you know, like, should we think about, you know, something else, right? But I definitely agree with you that in terms of the like model storage and, you know, like the artifacts, basically pieces we're missing right now today in Kubeflow. We have ML metadata, as you mentioned, in the issue, but it's not actually like it's completely loosely coupled from other Kubeflow components like training, tuning, serving, right? Notebooks.
I know this is going to be a lot of work on our end. We're on the hook to deliver it though, Alexei. So like we're going to begin work on this if it hasn't already begun. And yeah, I know there's a lot here, but not unfortunately, we have to have this for our product. So really, it's just a whether, and I understand we need to find a home for it within Kubeflow. I'm actually really interested in we probably have to talk about this, Josh, like the process by which we introduce new components. We've got a list of a handful of things that are like candidates for us to potentially send. And I doubt any of them have homes, because we're talking about increasing the scope of the project overall, I think, a little bit. And so maybe there isn't a natural place for them.
So I think this is a big problem that Kubeflow has always had a tension between, which is, are we a project that creates tools, or are we a project that integrates existing tools?
Yes. Well, I guess the another way to frame it would be like, how complete should it be? I think we would argue it's incomplete without a couple of additional things, and those are what we're trying to offer.
Yes, obviously you can just run your own model registry. There's people. I understand that I want Kubeflow to be a complete option as well, but I also don't want to make it so that if there is no clear consensus in the world as to what the best version of a specific tool is, that Kubeflow just supports everything, you know. But in this case, model registry specifically is its own problem, because there just isn't any good open source model registries.
I'm supportive of an integration with the model registry. I need to understand exactly what the commitments are from this project team here. I think you heard kind of the conversation we had on the Spark side. I think it's kind of similar to that. In terms of, can we see a path where this will live for multiple releases?
There's no question about that. If we're going to introduce it, it might not be GA. So like I mentioned about the incubation stuff, it'll graduate through our own incubation process. And if we put it into GA, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, so I'm supportive of it. I'm sure others will be too. I think the devil's in the details, but to the point of how did we move forward with the Spark is that we had some people that were, setting up to say that they would kind of run it. I think you have some ideas here of some people, mainly from Red Hat, which is fine to kind of help bring this along. Somehow we need to figure out one, if the larger community can vote on this and then both on whether they think it's needed at this point and then whether they agree with the approach. But I'm glad to kind of put this to force it to a vote and try to get this done before Christmas, right? I would like to, before the end of the break, is to make a decision on this one, because it seems like you've got some, strong activity here.
So how, is it actually a product yet, or is it just going to be done?
No, but it's in this quarter's execution. The team is beginning to work on it. It will come into our product. Yep.
So I was
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
I was just saying, I think maybe then make sure that if you are going to build it, make sure you just build it in a way that it could be donated,
Well, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Totally. And that's why that issue was filed. Like, so Josh, if you could, anything you can do to give us a little bit more confidence would be great. I mean, we can build open source software and just like code dump it somewhere. We're trying to do a little bit better than that.
And I think, so just to add to the point, I think like when we're going to have this proposal, like we also need to think about integrations and how actually it benefit Kubeflow users. Because like the problem of Kubeflow, because it's very complex and most of the components completely loosely coupled, many people don't know, it's hard for them, like to use it as the whole ML ecosystem, right? So I think like for any components that we're going to adopt, and similar what we had discussion with Spark, right? We need to think about integration with existing part of Kubeflow, right? How model registry will replace ML metadata for pipelines, for example, or how we can export models after training to this model registry, right? So you can push it to the K-store, for example, inference, right? Which means you don't need to store your models on S3 or on GCS, right? You can use this like Kubernetes native model registry for you, right?
Yes. We have disconnected use cases that we're going to have to solve. So one thing we could do, folks, maybe this will help, is our like feature requirements, and maybe I think there's even a design doc floating around on this. We could sanitize that and post it and see if that'll help make folks understand, what we're driving towards.
I think that would. It seems pretty clear to me that any project that we adopt has to have at least 2 companies involved. That's kind of I'm not saying that that's currently a requirement, but I feel like that should be a requirement, right? So if what you're looking through us is for a way to find another company to get involved, that's probably something we can help with.
Actually, I would like to know what the criteria are for introducing new projects.
Well, it hasn't been done in many years, so. Well, other than people joining an existing component because they're kind of so similar to it, like with the training operator, I think they adopted a few other training operators. But
okay. Otherwise, I feel like the goals, the requirements could move. Like this is the first. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with it, but haven't heard that there's a 2-company requirement. So I just worry that there's other things.
Well, there was for working groups. That was actually already there for working groups.
Okay, got it. Yep.
Yeah, it's loose though, and the fact is, I think it's aspirationally that is a fantastic thing, and practically it makes sense for us to have. So hopefully let's try to put a deadline and work backwards to it and try to find a way that it works for both the community and you guys. So I don't know, when do you guys want to make a decision? When do you need kind of response from us on this? Is before the end of the year too slow? Do you need it faster than that? I mean,
It would
we're
help.
looking at it now, right? We're going to comment it now, but a final decision probably can't happen before that time frame, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're already on the path to engineering it. If we do anything that's incompatible with what y'all want, we'll fix it. I think the incentives are lined up for us to do it. So in a community centric way. So yeah, if we can meet that, maybe if we can have a final in 4 weeks.
Okay. I can bring it up at the steering committee meeting this week and see if there's a blocker. And see if we can
let's assume that we're both acting in good faith, right? Like that if you make a product that is good for the open source world that we would want and that it makes sense for both of us, that we'll accept it, right? We're not going to be unreasonable, presumably. It's just the problem is right now it doesn't exist, so it's hard to make even any decision, right, on anything.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Thanks, folks.
But if you need another company, then that's a separate discussion. We could help we could publicize it, saying we're going to build it.
Yeah. Well, that could be just a simple mailing list message. I get it. Thanks, folks. Appreciate it.
All right, we're over time. Thanks, everybody, for the exciting conversations. Really great how much energy there is around the community. So, I mean, this to me means a lot. I think it shows that people are investing, and that's good.
Thanks again. See you.
See ya.
So yeah, there was another update, but I need one of the root approvers on the website to fix it, and I've pinged them, but they're not there. It's for the it's to update with the front page of the website with the CNCF logo and also I cleaned up the components, which we're all talking about components that don't exist in Kubeflow anymore.
This one right here.
Yeah, so it only can be approved by James or Chen. Okay.
I talked to James about this, and I've looked at it. I've given you some comments offline.
Oh, I didn't change the front part there. I was saying that part that we were talking about, I didn't actually touch that at all.
Okay.
So we can make that a separate PR, but this is what it currently says on the website. There's no change to that.
Okay. So is it this one here, or is it this 3622, or is it something else? I can't.
It's the one I put it under next meeting, which is down the bottom of the current day's one. Yeah, the website stands here.
All right.
So yeah, if there's any comments, I'm happy to make changes. So the only change that's significant from everyone's perspective is that I've made the so look at the logo rather than the file changes, probably the image. Sorry, I mean it's fixing the so it's making it so that the main changes are that the actual descriptions of each of the so I've added the components that we currently have in the project, because previously there was components that didn't exist anymore. And I've just split it into pipelines, notebooks, AutoML, model serving, model training, and community, because those are our current components. The community is just to make it balanced.
Changed all the language in all of these right here, right? I mean,
so that language has changed. Yes. So that's the only thing that it's just taking what people have written on their descriptions from their repos mostly. But
yeah, I wasn't gonna approve that, to just be honest. I wouldn't approve the way this is written right now.
Okay, what changes did you propose? Even if it's not the perfect solution, it still is better in my mind than what the current front page says.
I agree, we're moving in the right direction. It's just the wording here, because each of them talks about Kubernetes. I don't think we got to figure out a way to get Kubernetes out of the descriptions.
The word Kubernetes is important for SEO, right? Because the goal is to have it so that if you type model registry Kubernetes into Google, you get this page.
I understand, but there's Kubernetes in each of the pipelines, notebooks, AutoML. Each of these descriptions refers to Kubernetes in a different way, and and there's a lot of prepositional phrases in there. It's just The language
I mean,
has to-
yeah, if we want to make, what I'm saying is if we're happy to merge it, I mean, what I'm saying is if there's no like, it's wrong, like if it's more of a stylistic problem, I don't see any harm in merging it and then having another discussion because it might take a long time to get. Like I've pretty much just taken what people have written on their websites, all the websites, on their distributors.
I looked at the existing and I looked at this. I like the existing.
But the existing one's wrong. Like it's actually just incorrect.
The descriptions of pipelines and notebooks.
Yeah, they're horrifically wrong. Like the biggest problem is that it implies, for notebooks at least, there's other ones as well for other pieces, that it implies that only Jupyter is supported. The other problems are that the most of the other ones, like it doesn't even talk about Katib or AutoML or K serving. Like there's no mention of Katib at all.
This, and I understand how hard it is, and I appreciate it, and I don't want to be a blocker. I think that we're gonna have to work on the language a bit. And
do we agree with having those 5 components there?
Pipelines, notebooks of AutoML. Yeah, some people might get twisted about serving, but I think it belongs there.
It's part of the Kubeflow ecosystem, I think, but.
And you don't have like the central dashboard or the web apps, right?
But those are just kind of, in my mind, those are like the connecting tissue, which don't need callouts on the front page. This is really, no one really
That
reads this.
actually is some of the most important core of Kubeflow. Is all that authentication, authorization, all that stuff that is kind of the really, really hard stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we can add that as the first component if you want.
I don't know.
The purpose of this, yeah. I mean, my thought process is that this kind of resets us back to information not being actually incorrect.
Yeah, I get your point, and I appreciate it.
And we can make more PRs. Like I want each of the teams to maintain their own banner, if you will.
Let me put it this way. I don't want to dissuade people one way or another. I'll put my comments in. I didn't want to be, go through and try to go through every single one. I'll just put my high level comment. Let's let everybody else comment. Let's try to get a decision on this so it doesn't hang out there. And if we have to do it in a different way or whatever, we will. But let's try to get this one resolved in the next 10 days or less. And if it's good enough, to your point, and we'll iterate on it, and everybody says, look, this is good enough and we can iterate and make it better, I'm cool with that. Okay.
Yeah, my thought process is if you own a component, you can obviously immediately change the front page if you want to for your own component. This is just making it so that everyone's components are actually listed, because not everyone's components were even listed before.
That would be an honest request. Is if you're a working group lead and you can reword this in the way, but the problem is then we're going to get 6 different people saying it 6 different ways, and my whole thing was, do we need to have Kubernetes in each one of these descriptions? Because these are very short 1-sentence type of descriptions, and putting Kubernetes in there just makes it very awkward, in my opinion.
I think that it isn't wrong to say that the purpose of Kubeflow pipelines is to build machine learning workflows on Kubernetes stuff.
I'm with you, but I think we should just put it right at the top. Is it all the big value of this is it all runs on Kubernetes, and not explain it inside of each individual.
Yeah, I mean, also people don't really read the front page that much. It's mainly for SEO. Like it is mainly for SEO, to be clear. Like
I get it. It's kind of like Kubeflow components all run on Kubernetes or something. I don't know how to do it, and that's why I stalled on this, quite frankly, is I didn't know how to do what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, as long as people don't find it offensive what's written here, and then we can say, if you are the maintainer of pipelines, like we're a pipelines working group, please, if you disagree with the wording, make a change. This is mostly just about saying, previously Katib wasn't even listed, Kserve definitely wasn't listed. Notebooks had just incorrect information. The model serving and stuff was just weirdly rambling about a whole bunch of frameworks. And yeah,
I understand your point. You understand me. I'm not going to block you. I'm going to say honestly how I feel on this and let other people decide, right? But I'm with you that if you want to move it forward, iterate, I'm cool with that too. All right.
Yeah,
I'm still here. I think like we need to, so it's important to change Matthew, and I kind of agree with you. We need to change the front page, but it takes more time for every working group to comment because it's affecting all of the components of Kubeflow. So we need to find a consensus across all the people, across all the components, right?
But what I'm saying is that, like, yes, eventually, but like what I'm saying initially, maybe we can just merge this, and if long as no one's like against it, and then if someone wants to immediately follow up with a PR for their own component, I'm more than happy to. Because
It's
right
kind
now
of
people
sure.
are getting
Is it
confused by the
really,
front
really
page.
wrong, or is it just slightly could be worded different? Is the difference of what Matthew is trying to propose, and I like right.
Yeah, I understand, but I think like in these kind of fundamental changes for all the use of Kubeflow, we shouldn't be rushed, you know.
It
Because
is
this
so
page
no,
was
no.
there.
Like, I think I actually disagree. It is so bad. The front page right now is so bad that it's actually misleading.
I understand that, but people will see this page for the last 4 years, right? So they saw this page for the last 4 years, and right now they see something different, right? So we just need to be careful of what we're actually showing them for the first time, right? So maybe I understand. Maybe we need to do it quick because of the adoption of CNCF. Maybe we need to provide the comment for the next, I don't know, week or like 2 weeks. But let's just ask all working groups to comment on this PR and find the consensus, right? Because it is very important for all the components of Kubeflow.
It also fixed the styling as well on the front page, but that's all separate discussion.
Yeah, I understand.
It also fixes the footer styling as well and adds the required trademark labels. Because I merged those two PRs together because it was just they're adding the front page label that they required by the CNCF made the front page look really bad, and so I just I had to reformat this front page a little bit. But in any case, I think if the steering committee is okay with it, and then every other component can just like raise a PR to update their wording, unless the steering committee is absolutely against it, and then we can change it. But like that's my main thing.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, I'm not going to be absolutely against it, but I prefer to do a little bit differently. But I barring that rewriting it myself or getting everyone else to rewrite it to Andrew, and I don't think it will take weeks or months to get that done. So I understand the iteration process, right?
Yeah, I just don't want to let best get in the way of not being horrifically misleading. That's my main.
Yes, yeah. And I appreciate your patience and persistence on this, Matthew. I really do.
It's like, yeah, there's a few pages left to fix on the website, but we're almost at the point where the website looks like a real website now. Almost.
Great. Okay. I got it. Let's keep it pushing forward and see what we can move forward with on this. Make sense?
Yeah, as long as, I pinged James and stuff, so he might approve it. And then if he approves it, then it's not a big deal. We can just make a follow-up PR with each of the components.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Okay, cool. Andre?
Thanks, Josh.
See y'all.
Thank you for your time, Josh. Yeah. More things to come. Yeah, see you soon. See you around.
Bye.